to Bill Flynn in the morning.
We have none other than the turf commander with us this morning, Jonathan Rigsbee of GrowinGreen. This is the Love Your Lawn Hour. And Jonathan, good morning. Good to see you. First time I've seen you this season, so thank you for coming in.
Good morning, Bill. How are you today?
Just great. Lots to discuss when it comes to this time of year. But first of all, I want to do just a quick recap. You were at the big Lawn and Garden Show at the Greensboro Coliseum all weekend. Started Thursday. You gave away all kinds of really nice prizes and premiums. I know it was $100 a day giveaway you were talking about.
We did, and we had a great time. We had a great turnout. Saw a lot of good customers. Got a lot of good feedback. I was able to take Clover out with me, and she was just the hit of the show.
And I just, so folks know, Clover is
our litmus test, our mascot, companion, table cleaner offer. She is about a 3-year-old, basically a mutt, for lack of a better term, that wandered up in my yard a couple years ago and had about 65 ticks on her, malnourished. And when she jumped in my lap, we knew she was probably going to stay.
In that something.
And we looked for the owner. They never came and got her, never advertised for her. And so we made her a pet. But one of the things that we found about Clover is she was just a great people person. And so we've been taking her to trade shows. We've been taking her to different events, and she's just a hit with the kids. She's a hit with everybody. But the biggest thing that we kind of symbolize Clover as our mascot is, one, it's a great marketing tool. Everybody loves a dog. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing is it's a litmus test that any product that we would put on our customers' lawns goes on my lawn first. So she's the most important thing next to our children and my wife. And we're not going to put something out there that's going to be bad for her or my children. And we're not going to put anything bad on your lawn.
So everything that you would be willing to roll out for a lawn treatment is, in essence, Clover approved. Or
Clover
her paw
approved.
of approval.
Exactly. We have her paw of approval on it. And it gives us a good, incentive to go that extra mile in testing stuff. We have our own in-house testing facilities with Tommy. And we test everything we use to make sure we're not going to have a problem. We do extensive research, studying the product. Most of it's been university tested. And we don't use products that are 20 years old, 10 years old. A lot of the stuff that you buy in the big box stores are older technology. And while they're still good, some of them aren't as safe as some of the stuff that we can buy and not as advanced.
And in that last 10 years, I mean, this is something you go to seminars year-round all the time to make sure that you are at the forefront of these things. And one of the things that I think I've learned in working with GrowinGreen, and by the way, my lawn is really looking great. So you had a treatment back in the fall and said, just give it some time, and it's really doing some great things right now. But the corner that has been turned is really not just the toxicity, but the idea of really working with nature versus battling nature, hitting it head on, which is a whole different mindset for a lot of people, isn't it?
Well, it is. Our industry we've always been purveyors of conservation, protecting our waterways. We all know that turf is one of the healthiest filters that you can have in filtering out, dirt, dust. I always give people the visualization of the big Kansas Dust Bowl days. If we had turf out there, you wouldn't have the Dust Bowl. And if we ever lose all our turf, that's where we'll be back. So it does a lot for us, and a lot of us take it for granted. It filters our water. It keeps our houses cooler by getting them a cooling effect by absorbing the sunlight. But one of the things that we've kind of taken the approach of is going to a soil-first approach, where we build the soil through organics and biological products, and then the soil will take care of the plant on its own. Mm-hmm. And then over time, it allows us to put less inputs in. The plant's more sustainable. It can kind of self-take care of itself.
Now, I'd like to go into how homeowners in the last 10 days or so, a lot of folks have gotten out there and done their first mowing of the season, and probably discovered some things that maybe they forgot about or hadn't noticed along the way. You know, as you pick up the sticks, you realize there's something under it. What kinds of things are you hearing from your clients and people in this part of the country about what they're seeing after that first cut?
Well, what we always hear is panic. That's the main thing. Everybody goes out and panics because their lawn looks horrible and their neighbor's is greening up, theirs is not, they've got weeds. And then they feel like, oh, I've got to fix it. I've got to do this, got to do that. And what we like to remind them is you've got to understand this is a commitment to a system. It's what we do is not rocket science. It's not anything that you can't do yourself, but most people are not willing or have the time to commit to doing it the way it needs to be done. One of the things we're going to talk about today is what not to do to your lawn so you can have a good lawn.
What not to do.
What not to do.
Is this like a number one I can do here? Number one of what not to do. Let's start.
Yep. Let's start with the commercial that's driving me crazy right now is Scotty from Scott's.
Mm-hmm.
And he is saying, seed your lawn. Seed your lawn. And
right now, I'm here in the end of last day of March.
They are pushing seed right now so hard, it's unreal. And that's great for their bottom line. Not so much for your lawn long term.
Now, why is that? What do you see at GrowinGreen that makes that disconnect?
Well, the first thing is if we come out and seed your lawn right now, no matter what we do, how good we do it, it's not going to develop a root system strong enough to get through the summertime. And if you do have irrigation, then what's going to happen is you're going to have to water it so much in the summer, you're going to create fungus. You're going to create more weeds. We can't put any crabgrass control down. We can't do any broadleaf weed control. So you're going to end up really in worse shape than you were to start with. But you seeded.
You got seed, then you get the early sprouts, and then by then the root system is not developed enough to make it through these harsh summers that we have. And so that dies out, and then the bad stuff has an area to come into that previously didn't?
Exactly. And we have nothing that we can do to help you except for redo it again in the fall.
All right, now here's the thing. Homeowner runs out on the weekend, says, I got to do this, and then they call you 3 or 4 days later, says, I put some seed out, come out and fix it, make it grow for me, those kinds of things. That then becomes a problem for both of you to work through that, I guess.
Well, and what we have to do is just be realistic with customers saying, we can give you a short fix, or we can give you the permanent, more sustainable fix. And that's what we're about. We're not about coming out and doing a quick hit in the spring, take your money, and then we'll deal with you when you call. What we are going to do is come out and be honest with you and say, we know what works. One, we've tested it. We've done it for years.
Okay, if you'll hold it right there, we're going to take a short break and continue with things that things not to do on your lawn. And our list will continue with Jonathan Rigsbee of GrowinGreen and GrowinGreen.com on the website.
Call now. The number is 896-1980, AM 980 The Eagle.
I want to encourage you to, as you're looking at your lawn and the grass and the foliage around the trees, the bushes, everything, there's great information on the Ask the Expert option at GrowinGreen.com, the website. This is the Love Your Lawn Hour. We have Jonathan Rigsbee, the founder of GrowinGreen. And if you have a question about your lawn, how things are progressing or maybe not progressing, you can join us on the program right now. 896-1980 is our phone number, 896-1980. And we've started a list just this morning of things not to do for your lawn, especially right now. And one of the number one issue where you see a lot of people giving you advice, go ahead and overseed. Get a lot of seed going. Go ahead and plant, and Jonathan's made the discussion, I think, very well, that you can do that. You'll get some immediate results, but in the long run, it's going to be dying out unless you just water it like the dickens, and then you get the possibility of mold growing and or other problems because of all the water that you have to have. So thank you. Is anything else about number one?
Well, and like I say, the biggest thing with seed is, everybody is used to a routine of going out, seeding, fertilizing, putting lime out. The problem is they never come back. And that's kind of the next thing we're going to get into is the spread it and forget it mentality. And that's
by the way, a lot of Americans are the set it and forget it, spread it, and as you just said, forget it. We want to push that one button and everything automatically is done, and that's just not going to happen, right?
It's not, and that's what we see a lot of. In fact, one of our biggest complaints is, well, you aren't out here long enough. You know, it takes my husband half a day to do the lawn. Well, we didn't go get a biscuit. We didn't have to get our tools out of the shed. We didn't have to fix it, put the wheel back on the spreader, go to the hardware store. You know, we didn't have to do all that. We pull up, we're ready to go. We know what we're doing. But the biggest thing with that is the husband will spend the one day he's got to go out there and do it. He'll have to move everything off his plate to get the lawn done. Then he'll never come back to it until the fall. And it's a living plant. You've got to keep nourishing it. When we put fertilizer out, it lasts about 6 weeks. If you're not coming back every 6 weeks and dealing with the new crop of weeds, giving it fertility, looking for fungus, insect problems, then that lawn's just going to turn south on you. And you're going to get to the fall and be in worse shape you were in the spring. And that's typically the pattern we see with most customers.
We get real excited about it. Want to take care of it on that nice weekend, and boom, there's a few weeks later, the lawn is actually giving you cues along the way. But if you're focused in other directions, right?
Well, exactly, and there's just so much. I look at my own house, and I've got so much that I want to do outside, and I look at the time on my calendar, and it's just they're not compatible. So what I have to do is figure out what I can do best, what I can do efficiently, and then look at other ways to get the other stuff done. And for me, it's a little bit of the opposite. While I love to work in the plants, I don't have the time to prune them, get the mulch done. So I'll have somebody do that for me where I'll focus on the turf. And for a lot of people, it's vice versa. They can put mulch out. They can spray their weeds in their beds. They can do some pruning. But when it comes to the turf, that's where the expertise comes in to really have a nice lawn. That it's probably better to hire a professional if you really want that lawn to look good. And over time, we're going to be more economical because you're going to get results for what you spend. And that's the biggest thing I tell people is, we may look like we're expensive up front, but when you add up the number of times you did it and didn't get good results and had to keep redoing it, then we're going to beat you every time.
I find it interesting that you mentioned somebody along the way said, well, you weren't here long. You weren't here half a day. And I'm thinking, that's the last thing I want. I want the yard to be my own, and the shorter time you can be there, the more it's going to be my time. I almost like a surgeon. The last thing you want is a surgeon that's going to cut you open and leave you open for 3 or 4 days. I mean, you want somebody to go in with precision and knowledge and do it quickly, because guess what? Your body heals up faster and all of those things. And I would think similarly with a lawn, as you mentioned, is a living organism. The last thing you want is repeated, traumas to it if you can quickly handle that situation and let the lawn bounce back more rapidly. I mean, that's just smart business and good business, I would think.
Well, and we take a philosophy that a lot of golf course superintendents use called spoon feeding. Mm-hmm. We don't believe in dumping a lot of product out at one time because your plant can't take it up. Most of it gets wasted and washed into the waterways or down, into different municipalities. Mm-hmm. The lime's a good example. A lot of people want to throw a ton of lime on their lawn. Well, your lawn can only take about 30 pounds per 1,000 square foot at a time. Anything over that's wasted. So it's getting to those precision amounts, which is what's best for the lawn, your pocketbook, and the environment. And that's really what we want to promote, is a good, well-balanced, sustainable environment.
One of the great things, too, is the customization that you're known for here at GrowinGreen. You've got, in our case, we got dogs in the backyard, we got a fenced-in backyard, and there's a different biosphere, if you will, for the backyard, and a different expectation, frankly, than versus the front yard. I mean, I still love the backyard and occasionally want to be out there and play and, watch my step, those kinds of things. But to be able to hyper-customize delivery of product and service to even within that single client's expectations at different points on their lawn, where the trees are, where the bushes are, where the dogs hang out.
Well, exactly, and that's why, we're not a national company, we're not a regional company, because simply the best formula that we found is having the same person on your lawn every time. And that's hard to do in this environment of people changing jobs.
Oh, yeah.
But we've got a really good group of guys. They've been with me for several years now, and we do our best to keep the same person on your lawn every time. That allows them to know you, know your lawn, know your pets, know what works, what doesn't, what areas wash, what areas don't get enough sunlight, and then they can, over time, treat it just like their own.
Well, we're doing, I hope, pretty well on our list of what not to do. We've done 1, we've done 2. What is number 3 on?
Number 3, we're going to move into the beds a little bit.
All right, that's coming up. Number 3, we're going to look at the beds, and we're going to take a short break and come up with the next installment of what not to do to your lawn here on the last day of March and this upcoming holiday weekend as well. It's AM 980 The Eagle. If you have a question for Jonathan Rigsbee from Growing Green and the Love Your Lawn Hour, you can call us right now, 896-1980.
Call now. The number is 896-1980. AM 980 The Eagle.
Good morning. It's 9:36, 24 minutes till 10. The Love Your Lawn Hour, and we have the turf commander with us, Jonathan Rigsbee, from GrowinGreen. The website is growingreen.com, GrowinGreen.com, and 1-866-LAWN-HELP if you would like to call and schedule an appointment and have him come out and give an evaluation. And this is a great service. And we continue now with our things not to do, and Jonathan has got a list. And would you recap very quickly 1 and 2 before you get to 3?
Number 1 was not to seed this time of the year. Now, I will say sometimes you just have to. Sometimes your lawn's new construction, something's been torn up, you've got to seed it. But understand that you're going to have to reseed it in the fall. If you seed in the spring, you plan on redoing it in the fall. That's number 1. 2 is don't spread it and forget it. Whatever you do, if you're not willing to commit to a systematic approach, you're not going to get very good results. So number 3, we're going to move into the beds a little bit. And this is one that's really been out there for years. It's crepe murder. This is the time of year we see everybody hack their crepe myrtles up.
Crepe murder.
Yep, crepe murder. And there's actually a law on the books in Kernersville about this.
Get out.
And
really?
There was a restaurant in Kernersville who hacked their crepe myrtles and got fined for it. And it is it's that bad. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. You'll see your neighbor go out with a chainsaw and just cut the crepe myrtles off at 3 foot, 4 foot. No particular reason, no particular rhythmatic.
Kind of a brutal approach.
Yeah, just
yes.
And really it comes down to because they see the neighbors doing it. They see somebody else doing it, so they think that's how you prune it. And that's the worst thing you can do to a crepe myrtle. I'm sorry, I'm calling it that.
What is it about crepe myrtle that is it particularly exposed to damage or poor results because of this?
Well, what happens is with any tree or any shrub, there's a proper way to prune it. And that proper way is to thin it out and to focus on the structure of the plant itself. And by doing that, you want to kind of stand back and you want to make sure that you don't have crossing branches where the branches cross it to the inside and rub each other. You don't want to have a structurally weighted plant where it's too heavy on one side. Just basic common sense.
So let me ask you, that crossover of one plant literally kind of reaching into the other plant's territory, is that part of what you're talking about?
Yeah, and when you look at a tree, any branch that you see that's growing down to the inside of the tree or that crosses over another branch where they may rub is a potential for damage from ice, insects, any kind of wind damage. You want it to look like a vase where you have just a nice structure. The thing with crepe myrtles, the rule of thumb that we always use in the industry is you don't cut anything off bigger than a pencil. So unless things are crossing, and when you have a crepe myrtle that, you know, you've been out in the yard and it's just full and it's thick, what you really want to do is step back to find 3 or 4 central leaders, the big branches that are growing nice and straight and are very, very sturdy, and then take everything else other than that out, okay, and do it, but you do it from the bottom. You don't do it from midway up. Anytime you prune a plant, you always want to cut back to where the branch meets the trunk, and we call that a root collar or a branch cut.
Now, I think for a lot of folks, this is news because we look at it, we say, okay, this thing is 12 feet high. I want it to be about chest high or whatever the distance is. And we just kind of tend to go in at that chest level and say, this is where I want the plant. But you're saying the best way is to make sure you prune from the very base, from the root, and maintain the strongest parts, most straightest parts of the plant, but get rid of really significant chunks of the plant that are growing in areas you don't want them to grow.
And I think the biggest problem with what you just said, though, is if you've got a tree that's 20 foot tall and you want it to be chest tall, it's the wrong plant for that place.
Okay, yes.
You know, always the first rule of thumb is plant right place. So if you've got big crepe myrtles and they're right up beside your house, you really should think about just taking them out and putting something there that's going to fit the size you want it.
Do they necessarily transplant well at that point?
When they're that big, you know, that's another old saying, don't turn a $10 plant into a $100 day. And you're better off just pulling it out and putting something in there.
But still, I think sometimes as homeowners, we do get emotionally attached to a specific plant. And you say, I really like that. I just don't like where it is now, you know.
And if it's, you know, and if it's manageable, you can always try to transplant it. And some do. Crepe myrtles do actually transplant really well. I've moved a lot over the years and have had great success. But, you know, again, you've got to do it before it gets that big, or you're going to be really struggling. If it's over 6-7 foot, you're going to have a hard time transplanting it without professional help. But the problem with the crepe myrtles is once you make that cut in the middle of the stalk, it's not coming back. You've damaged that tree permanently. And because you've basically, whatever's going to come out, it's going to be sucker growth. It's not going to be strong. It's not going to be basically from the foundation of the plant. It's going to, whenever you cut a plant, whether it's grass, tree, or shrub, you force it to grow. You force it to heal that injury that you just created by sending out growth. So what happens is, and if you've ever noticed somebody will cut their crepe myrtles at the same place every year, and it will start to look like a knuckle at the end of the plant, and you'll get these just twigs coming out of that knuckle, and almost looks like a pom-pom tree growing, and that's just stress growth. It's sucker growth. It's really not hardy long-term growth. And, you know, to me, the best crepe myrtles are the ones that are kind of grown. You bring the tops down about to the pencil width. When that stem that's way up tall, you know, you kind of bring it down about 1 foot to 2 foot and cut it off. Crepe myrtles always bloom on their new growth. So there's a lot on the internet of how to properly do it, but crepe murder is not the proper way.
Great advice. Avoid crepe murder. Avoid the jail time and penalties otherwise for that. And we'll continue on our list. We got 2 more things that we haven't gotten to yet of things not to do to your lawn. And we'll continue with Jonathan Rigsbee of GrowinGreen and GrowinGreen.com. The phone number there, 866-LAWN-HELP.
Call now. The number is 896-1980. AM 980 The Eagle.
Good morning. It's 8:46, 14 before 10. Hey, here's an idea. The great advice we've gotten on how not to commit crepe murder. Maybe you're fine. Maybe you're the person that handles the crepe myrtles beautifully. Maybe you got a neighbor that has been having continual trouble. Here's what you can do. You can go to the website later on, probably today or certainly tomorrow, and we'll have a podcast available of this radio show at GrowinGreen.com. That's GrowinGreen.com. And you can click on it and email it to your neighbor and say, hey, you may want to listen to these finer points. And that's one of the great things about the program you're hearing now. Folks can go back and listen to it. We cover a lot of information very rapidly, and you'll be able to access that. Also, Ask the Expert is part of the Growing Green offering of services right there on the website. Which, by the way, Ask the Expert, do you have to type in, you have a client number, or is that who accesses the Ask the Expert?
It's actually available to anybody. All you have to do is just click on it and put your question in the box and hit send. It'll come right to me.
How cool is that?
And I will answer it generally, within an hour, a couple hours, depends on when I can get to my computer. Right now, the only way I can answer it is from my computer. So if I'm out and about, my phone, for some reason, I can't. We haven't got it working on the phones yet. But
well, and we talk about an expert. Here, Jonathan is somebody who has studied at high levels at North Carolina State University. You've got agronomist Tommy Cowett on site with you as one of your employees. You've got a lot of resources, and maybe more important than anything I've just mentioned is the fact that you have faced already probably most any question that's going to come up specifically for this part of the country for this time of year.
Yeah, like I say, we've done this long enough that there's not a whole lot we haven't seen. We've seen just about anything and everything. So, and the biggest thing I will mention if you go to our website on Clover's blog, there is a whole blog dedicated to the crepe myrtle thing. I wrote it last year about crepe myrtle, and there's some good pictures of what to do, what not to do. And, any good reputable landscape company can come in and prune your plants properly. But there's a lot of good resources on the internet about proper pruning techniques. And, before you go and hack your plants up that you've invested a lot of money in, spend a little time researching the proper way to do it. Don't rely on your neighbor.
Proper prior pruning prevents poor plant performance, I think, would be the 7. Is it 7 Ps there or thereabouts? And don't ask me to repeat that. I forgot that already.
And that's going to lead to our next one is, most time after people do pruning, they want to mulch their beds.
Exactly. Want to get that looking good.
We see that quite often, and that's a great thing to do right now. It really spruces the beds up, gives you a clean definition to your lawn. But the one thing that we see a lot of and is really, really harmful to plants is just piling mulch up around the bases of the plants. And when you're putting mulch out, you don't want to bury your plant. You want to because you've got to remember that your roots, that it gets at the oxygen and the food and the water right there in the top couple of inches of soil. So when you just put 6 inches of really, really thick mulch on top of it, it can't get oxygen. The plants can't get sunlight. They can't get water.
You're stressing that plant.
And you're really changing that plant's environment. It's kind of like building a house, with big trees. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you can do all you can to protect the trees, but when you change the environment of the tree, it just doesn't survive.
Well, I have seen that as a homeowner that did exactly that. When we got the house we're in now, I specifically wanted to keep as many trees as possible. And what you said was a truth that I didn't recognize. I'm sure a lot of experienced horticulturists could have told me what I was ultimately going to find out. But a number of those trees, for instance, if you put a paved driveway near that root system, you've traumatized that tree. And, you may not even think about that. The fact that you pulled a shade tree from another tree that probably, was using that shade. I even think I've got a dog house that I put out in the backyard that caused a problem with a root system, and I lost another tree. Those kinds of things. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. And one of the best examples of that is dogwood trees. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves dogwoods. They're a beautiful tree. But where do you see dogwoods growing?
Well, not by themselves. The ones in my yard, they grow out in the woods.
Well, exactly. And that's where they do well. They're understory trees. They grow best underneath another tree. That's why they're not good, what we call parking lot trees. Crepe myrtle's a great parking lot tree. It loves the heat. It loves being by itself.
It loves being it's a solo act, the crepe myrtle.
But not dogwoods.
Yeah.
Dogwoods have a 50% survival rate in the nursery. That's under ideal conditions. You put it out in the parking lot, it's going to die. It needs to be underneath another tree.
I didn't realize.
And kind of in its natural environment.
I didn't realize they were that sensitive to environment. But, the idea that, that dogwood is so pretty and everything else around it's kind of a scrap look, and I'm gonna really highlight that dogwood. I'm gonna take out this other growth, and guess what? Your dogwood's gonna be exposed and not have a good day.
Exactly, and usually they don't do well in urban landscapes. They don't generally survive as well.
By the way, I want to make sure we get to our list. We're about out of time on our segment here, so we've got our list of 1, 2, 3, 4 things not to do we've done so far to your lawn. And mulch is number 4 on the list.
Number 4, and just want to hit on real quick the type of mulch. I personally like pine straw, and I like pine bark mulch. I don't like the small ones because they wash, but a lot of people like the shredded hardwood. That's really popular.
Mm-hmm. The real deep, almost.
The real deep, but it gets really compacted, and it almost creates a barrier where water can't penetrate. So be careful of that. The other thing are the decorative mulches. The red mulch was a big hit for years.
The red brick, what?
The red mulch where they grind up pallets,
right? Okay,
and turn them into mulch. And be careful with that. Some of the rubber mulches and stuff can have toxins in them that will release into your plants. And we've seen aluminum toxicities and different toxicities.
What about pulling that mulch right up to the base of the plant? Do you need to give it some room right there as well?
Well, and that's kind of what we're really talking about is you want to pull it back off of the base. You want it.
How big around an area should you make that?
Probably, what I do is I kind of layer it. So when you get up to the base right around the trunk, you're down to about maybe an inch. If you're going to put 2 inches of mulch down, you kind of want to layer it out. Just so it's not right up on that collar, because that'll cause it to rot. It'll cause, moisture. It's just like, in your house, you don't want your ground touching your wood, and it's the same principle.
I see.
So, but the last one we're going to hit on today is don't panic. It's not, you don't have to change the whole landscape in a day. You don't have to do everything in one day. The best thing to do is make a plan. Make a good plan that, and it may take a year or two to get your landscape where you want it, but do it right.
Well, here's on that panic thing. I can see somebody last week or even this week going out, and they got some Easter plans, and they want the iconic photograph, and maybe they got some family coming over and say, "Oh my gosh, that." There's some unrealistic expectations I think you could end up with if you end up with the expectation. It's got to be perfect by Easter. And that panic that you're talking about could well sit in.
Well, exactly. And then what happens is you spend a lot of money, a lot of time, you do more harm long-term than it's good. We're working with Paul J. Senior Arboretum in Kernersville. We have a partnership with them. We're going to be doing talks throughout the year on these very things. And I would encourage everybody, if you haven't been to the Arboretum in Kernersville, to go check it out. It's right there on Main Street. And they have a great lunch and learn series. They have some great speakers coming in. And if you really like your landscape, like working in the yard, that's a great place to learn. And just get involved in something where you can continue to learn and do it right.
Jonathan, I got time for one word or 2 word on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of what not to do. If you go through that list, a whole list, 1 word on each one of them would be great right now. Number 1.
What
not to do.
Seed. Fall. Do it only in the fall.
2.
Spread it and forget it.
Yep. Don't do that.
It's not going to work.
3.
Crate murder. You can't go back.
4.
Mulch.
Yeah. As we just talked about.
Common sense.
And
then panic.
And don't panic.
Just
panic. Call the man. Call GrowinGreen. The number there is 866-LAWN-HELP, 866-LAWN-HELP. And let me encourage you to visit the website, too. Great information available that will maybe help you deal with the panic. That's GrowinGreen.com. Jonathan Rigsbee, we're out of time. Great to see you. We'll look for you back here next Tuesday.
All right. Thank you, Bill.